Hey, I'm Bacon, and this is the fifth in the Innovations of Traveler video series. And in this one, we're going to talk about procedural world generation. Traveler introduced the first procedural generation system for creating entire star systems, which included planets, populations, and governments. The 77 release of Traveler was the first tabletop role-playing game to introduce this type of procedural world generation. The subsector creation system used a random table or random tables, pardon me, to define planetary attributes such as atmosphere, population, government type, and trade classifications within a structured hex grid. This system allowed for the emergent creation of entire star sectors, which enabled dynamic exploration rather than relying on a pre-written setting. So what did the landscape look like before Traveler? Dungeons and Dragons did have procedural elements. In fact, most of the games, the 7 games that I've been discussing over the course of this series, did have procedural elements, with the exception of maybe one. But we'll get into that. So Dungeons and Dragons, it did have random dungeon generation, such as in the Underworld Wilderness Adventure supplement, as well as wilderness generation from both that supplement I just mentioned and the strategic review in 75. But this focused on dungeon crawls and localized regions. So while it did have randomization for dungeons and localized regions or wildernesses, it lacked a cohesive system for generating entire worlds on the scale that Traveler introduced. Empire of the Petal Throne used randomized elements with regard to treasure and encounters, but Tecumel, the world, was extremely fixed and predefined by the creator. So there was no procedural world building. It was crafted as a static, pre-made setting. Metamorphosis Alpha, it did have randomized mutations and monsters. And while you were exploring a generation ship with room for expansion, there were no formal world-building tables. The setting was confined to the ship. Boot Hill had randomized gunfight outcomes and character traits, but there was no procedural world building at all. The focus was on combat and duels rather than creating an environment or setting. En Garde used random events in dueling and social interactions, but there were, again, no world-building mechanics. The game focused on personal interaction, not environmental creation. Tunnels and Trolls did use random dungeons in solo adventures, and similar to D&D, it focused on those dungeons. There was, again, no equivalent system for world building beyond the immediate dungeon space. And then Bunnies and Burrows did have randomized character abilities and challenges, but this game's narrative focus was on roleplay and survival, not geographic exploration, and so there were no world-building elements. When Mark W. Miller designed Traveler, he wanted to reflect the expansive, unpredictable nature of classic science fiction, especially frontier exploration found in the works of E.C. Tubb, the Numerous Saga, which I've mentioned before in other videos, and Jack Vance, like Planet of Adventure. And to emulate the feeling of a vast, unexplored galaxy, Miller implemented a procedural system where random dice rolls created unique worlds without requiring pre-written content. So what did these mechanics look like? In the original Traveler box set with the little black books, it provided a step-by-step method for generating planets and entire sectors. There was star system generation, where dice rolls determined the number of worlds in a system and their type. So examples would be a main world or a gas giant. Then there was the implementation of the Universal World Profile, or UWP. So each world received a UWP, which was a coded string of letters and numbers that defines the planet's characteristics. The following categories are generated by rolling 2d6 on tables. The starport, type A through X, which determines the quality of the facilities. The planetary diameter, 0 through 10, Earth is an 8 for an approximation. The atmosphere between 0 and 15, which ranges from a vacuum to exotic or dense air. Hydrographics, 0 to 10 scale, and this is the percentage of the surface covered by water. The population, 0 to 10, and this is done by orders of magnitude, so it's in the millions. The government, 0 to 15, was the political structure, democracy, dictatorship, etc. The law level was 0 to 15, which indicated legal strictness and involved weapon bans and the like. And then the tech level, 0 through 15, which represents technological advancement. So an example of a UWP would be A867A77-9. And this describes a world with a Class A starport, 8,000 kilometer diameter, standard breathable atmosphere, 70% water, tens of millions of people, a balkanized government, moderate law enforcement, and tech equivalent to modern Earth. There were also trade classifications, so worlds were then tagged with trade codes, agricultural, industrial, rich, etc., that shape economics and interplanetary trade. This system helped define trade routes and supply-demand dynamics procedurally. And then there were the encounter tables, and this is random space encounters as you would expect. So there are patrols, merchant ships, etc., all generated randomly. And this adds a living galaxy where the players never know exactly what they'll find, which at the time was pretty standard with regard to random encounters, right? So Traveller was not the first to do this, but this was an element of their overall world generation framework. So this procedural approach was a monumental leap forward for RPG design at its time, establishing principles that would inspire later systems across all genres. So what were the specific innovations or the benefits? Some of the benefits, let's call them benefits. There was emergent play. No pre-planning required. Entire sectors emerged organically through random generation. Replayability. Every session produced a unique galaxy, ensuring no two campaigns were identical. GMs could generate a sandbox for players to explore without crafting every world manually. And it was a living universe. Worlds had trade economies, law levels, and societal structures that evolved through play. So it was the first RPG model, to model an entire galaxy through procedural methods. And players could use only the tables they needed, making it flexible across playstyles. So if you wanted to spend your entire campaign on a single world, you could generate that world or portions of that world as it became required, as the party, explored certain areas of that world. That's the end of this one. I feel like it was maybe pretty quick. I don't know. I'm looking at maybe 8 minutes, maybe a little more than 8 minutes. So thank you very much for watching. There will be more to come, and I'll see you in the next one. Please like and subscribe, and take care, everyone.